if they were going to be called the Edmonton Dan McCreary's, would you be out of joint?
Oh, we're live.
So we're now live on YouTube, everyone. So we're just going to be getting started here. We're just going to do a quick election just prior to jumping into things. So are there any nominations for chair?
I would like to nominate Councillor John Sless to be our chair.
Councillor Sless, do you accept the nomination?
I'd like to thank my nominator and my team for such a fine campaign.
Okay, are there any other nominations for chair? Okay, seeing none, Councillor Sless, you're acclaimed as chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Councillor Wall?
Councillor Vanderstel.
Okay, Councillor Vanderstel, do you accept the nomination?
Begrudgingly, yes.
Okay, are there any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, seeing none, Councillor Vanderstel, you are acclaimed as vice chair. Okay, I will turn it over to you, Councillor Sless.
Sorry, John, can't hear you. John, can't hear you. Sorry.
I'll try that again on not on mute. How's that? I'd like to just remind the task force and our viewing public of a few procedural rules for our virtual meetings and operating as efficiently as possible. All members will be muted for the meeting to reduce feedback. All web cameras for task force members shall be turned on to ensure and track quorum. Staff will be requested to join the video meeting should the need to answer questions of members arise. Any member of the task force should indicate they wish to speak by pressing the raise hand button on the participant list screen, bottom right-hand side. Clerk staff will lower the hand when you have been recognized by the chair for your speaking opportunity. In the event a connection or service interruption occurs that affects quorum of the task force, we may recess for the meeting for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. All members participating via online video conference will vote using a show of hands, and the chair will announce the voting results. Having said that, are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, I believe there are no delegations or presentations. And this afternoon or this morning, we have one item for consideration, which is 5.1. Could I have a mover who would read it and a seconder? Councillor McCreary, seconded by Councillor Vanderstel. Councillor McCreary, could you please read the resolution?
Yes, Mr. Chair, seconded by Councillor Vanderstel. That report 2021-495, titled Review of City User Fees, be received. B, that the meetings of the task force be scheduled on a quarterly basis. And C, that staff be directed to prepare a report for the next meeting of the task force, which includes a review of user fees for parks and sports fields that includes an overview of the following. Point one, estimate of the amount of subsidy cost recovery the current fee structure provides. Two, details on the number, type of users of the service. Three, comparator analysis. Four, affordability considerations.
Thank you, Councillor McCreary. Are there any discussions on the motion? Councillor Wall first.
Thank you, Councillor Sless. And might I add, you're doing a great job as our chair. Thank you. Is there a Let's Talk Brantford component to this?
Not that I'm aware of. I think I'll let Joelle speak to this, but I think this is right now collecting information, but I could be wrong. Please correct me, Joelle.
Yes, Chair Sless. Certainly this report is really just an initial report to facilitate some discussion on the matter and seek some direction from this task force in where it would like to focus on a review of user fees. So there currently hasn't been any discussion or any formal plans for a Let's Talk Brantford or any other communication avenue as of yet. We have not discussed that with our communications department as of yet.
So I recall seeing something on social media about Brantford considering making changes to its user fees. That was maybe not through us then?
Yeah, Councillor Wall, I'm not aware of any such. Maybe perhaps Brian can answer.
I'm not aware of the user fees, Councillor. I know with the DCs and the ASDCs have been gone through a public process and you're getting a report.
So, I mean, word is definitely out. I received numerous calls this week from constituents about this meeting happening. So, I mean, I know Okay. Anyway, I guess what I want is it's never too early to start with the public engagement on this. And I was just hoping that we could just start that conversation sooner rather than later and get it going. Because I do feel like just from the calls that I've already received, for whatever reason, that this is going to be a contentious issue. There are some people who are strong proponents saying that these services are for people who live in the community and, they should, whatever. But how do we include that as a part of this motion? Just amend it?
I believe Councillor McCreary's got an amendment coming up, but I would tend to think that by the very nature of our structure, we're in good shape as far as consultation because we're meeting every 3 months. So in between meetings, there's ample opportunity, I think, for the public to get engaged and to hear what we have to say. But currently, I think the report that we're asking for is simply all background information. And once we've assembled that, I would presume then that would go out to the public. Then this is where we're at. This is where we think we should be or could be. What do you think? But I think before we start a conversation, we better know ourselves what it costs to produce an hour of ice time, what it costs to maintain a field for an hour, that type of thing. Get the background information so that people can have a legitimate discussion about it.
So then my last thought on the whole matter would be, is there going to be a staff proponent where we work with the frontline staff who, if this were to proceed, would be responsible for enforcing it?
Okay, I'll respond to that, I guess, in a way that I think looking at the county, or not the county, but outside of Brantford users is one small component of what we're doing here. We're actually looking, I think, trying to determine, because probably there's not a good answer. I don't know personally, and I don't think anybody else does on this committee, how much it costs us to produce 1 hour of ice. Are we charging minor hockey an appropriate amount or not? Is the community subsidizing it more than they should or not enough? So all of those things, I think, we'll be able to talk better about once we know what the actual numbers are that we're dealing with. But I think Councillor McCreary's amendment might have something that will clarify things for you, Councillor Wall.
Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor McCreary, you were next, sir.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. It's my understanding that there currently is some negotiation underway with County of Brant with respect to better sharing of costs. Is there a member of staff that could respond to that?
I can respond to that, Councillor McCreary, through you, Mr. Chair. There was a matter brought to an in-camera meeting about a letter of intent between the county and the city. Can't get into full details on that. However, there will be that matter be brought forth. We're anticipating City Council on September 28th. Those discussions, many things regarding cost sharing of many different services, social services, a number of other things.
Okay, thank you very much. So this committee is really examining two issues. One is, it's a reappraisal of what we charge for things internally to our clientele. And the other was the initiative brought forward by Councillor Vanderstelt, which looks at perhaps an opportunity to recover a greater degree of our costs from non-Brantford users. So I don't see anything in the resolution that's before us today that proceeds with the non-Brantford user piece of this. Mr. Hutchings, is that something that should not hit our plates until we've had that discussion that you just hinted at?
Yes, I would say that should.
Okay. So we can let that lay on the table for a bit. Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that we want to, I don't know if we want to amend that today. I'm going to leave that up to Councillor Vanderstelt to weigh in on. But I think what we've got before us today does not include that non-Brantford bit and won't include that probably going forward. So I'm going to wait to hear what Councillor Vanderstelt says. But I do also, Mr. Chair, I do also want to weigh in on exactly how I think that we should be looking at determining our costs. And I'll leave it to staff to take notes of what I'm about to say. We have, of course, two sets of inputs that go into determining what our costs are. Number one, there's the fixed departmental costs, and I'll use the Gretzky Center as an example. So our fixed set of departmental costs would relate to the operation of that building on a 24/7 basis. And during that full period of time, we not only have ice time, but we also have floor time for lacrosse. We have the gym, the fitness center. We have all those items for which staff are going to have to attribute a portion of those fixed costs as it relates to 1 hour of whatever the service is, okay? So that's point number one that needs to be accommodated. Point number two is the overhead charges that accrue, or the general administrative charges, which relate to the operation of the municipality outside of the operation of the departmental asset. That needs to be shown. And as well, then you have the actual work that goes into providing an hour of ice time, which generally, I guess, would be the labor costs and the fringe benefit costs. So I think it's important that as we do these things, that we recognize that strata of costs and that we examine it based on that, because we're not only looking at whether or not we make a dollar on these items, but there's a political component as well, because clearly there's a top end to what we want to charge kids to swim, and there's a top end to what we want to charge kids to play hockey and lacrosse. And that may not apply to some of the adult programs, but it's going to be up to this committee to make those recommendations later to council. So I think it's absolutely imperative that we have a full and complete understanding of every packet of costs that goes into our being able to deliver these services to our community, Mr. Chair. So I don't really want to put that in the form of an amendment, but if I'd be happy to provide that in a memo to staff later if they weren't able to capture that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McCurry. Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Chair Sless. Yeah, the first resolution that went through council on this topic was an interesting discussion, because what it had to do with was balancing the needs of our constituents for the all-in costs of, we'll use Councillor McCurry's idea of having a closer look at the Gretzky Center. We know that there's operational costs, strictly in terms of hydro there, just to run it when it was running properly pre-COVID. And we know that that is a tremendous cost that is borne by the taxpayer. So one of the ideas behind the non-resident user fee discussion was to find out whether or not, like Guelph, like Barrie, like Cambridge, and like Windsor, there would be any value in having that discussion about what the non-resident user fee would look like, who it would apply to. We didn't get too far down that line, so I'm greatly appreciative of this task force, because it was bringing a little bit more definition to what that looks like. Now, if I recall correctly, there was a very clear and definite opinion at that time. We didn't want to be charging Billy and Timmy and their mom coming from St. George, an extra $15-20 to swim at the Gretzky or use the ice. And I think that was a pretty pervasive idea that came out of council discussion. That being said, Guelph, Barrie, Cambridge, and Windsor, if you do read their user fee schedule, it's clear that they've spent an awful lot of time, a very exhaustive study in each of those 4 cases to find out where they should be internally and what they should apply to non-resident user fees. It's pretty straightforward as a means of lessening the burden on their taxpayers. And I think that's an open and valid discussion at any point. I really don't think it's a wrong-headed discussion. I think it's a brilliant discussion that needs to happen, because when we set ourselves up as a destination city, and there's a price tag to be paid for that. When people descend on Niagara Falls, you know what that means. When they descend on Port Dover, you know what that means. It comes at a cost. So I think it's probably a management / measurement discussion that we're having in a number of different fronts that I think is important for us to have. So as the review of city user fees, as the resolution is written, as it's concerned, meeting quarterly, I think it should give us ample amount of time and staff ample amount of time to do the same kind of forensic study of what they've done in the other 4 comparator communities and find out where we stand and what we could stand to gain, what we could stand to lose in terms of setting ourselves up as the tournament capital of Ontario. If we started charging user fees, what would happen to that? Where would the tournaments end up going? Would that have an adverse effect on us as well? I think these things all need to be weighed and measured responsibly in an open dialogue. I don't think it was in any way, shape, or form meant to be punitive to any one group or individual. Or I think it's a good discussion to have. I think it's a healthy one to have. So for what's on the floor right now, especially the comparator analysis, I think it's really important that we don't set ourselves up higher or lower than other communities who are experiencing this type of legislation or discussion. That being said, Mr. Chair, I'm looking forward to a frank and balanced and straightforward discussion on the topic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vanderstel. Yeah, I think really what we're getting here with this resolution is we're getting the information brought to us in a manner that we can digest and understand, and then have the discussions that we're talking about now. But to start the discussion, I think we need the background material, and I think that's what we're getting through this resolution. Having said that, Councillor McCreary.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I think it's also important that that this committee give direction to municipal staff with respect to which comparator communities we want to examine. Quite frankly, it doesn't do us any bloody good to talk about Peterborough because our folks aren't going to go there. And I think what we really want to see is those communities which abut the city of Brantford, which would namely be Oxford, County of Brant, Regional Municipality of what's her name to the north, HN, and the new city of Hamilton, which would include the boundary committees. And I think I actually would like to include that as an amendment, Mr. Chair, with your leave.
Yes, that's fine.
So the names again for the benefit of staff would be County of Brant, Oxford, City of Woodstock, if it's not included in Oxford, and it may not be. And then there'd be Haldimand, Norfolk, Hamilton, and regional municipality of, oh gosh, what the hell's it called? What the heck is it called?
Waterloo?
Waterloo, Cambridge.
Yeah, I think
the Waterloo area. Okay. So I'd like to see those as a minimum. And also perhaps the communities that Councillor Vanderstel cited, which have apparently a program with respect to a 2-tiered pricing system. And Councillor Vanderstel, perhaps when he seconds this, he could perhaps repeat the names of those communities for the amendment.
Am I putting my hand up to second?
Go ahead, Councillor Vanderstel.
Yes, so those, as well as any comparative situations that are similar in nature to what we were experiencing here in Brantford Brant, of course.
Okay, and are you seconding the amendment? Seconded, okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor? I guess we'll just raise our hands. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. On the motion as amended, any further discussion? Councillor McCreary. You're still muted, Councillor McCreary.
How's that? That's better.
That's good.
So I think the public should recognize, though, that what we're doing, as the chair indicated, is that we're gathering the information to allow this task force to make recommendations to council as a whole about where we go with our rates. And we also have the piece that Councillor Vanderstel included, which is looking at whether or not those rates should apply to residents of other communities in some respect. But that's not on our table right now. And I hear what the mover of that portion of the resolution said, and I think we can have that discussion, but I'm hopeful that, as Mr. Hutchings indicated, that there will be something in the way of a deal with one of our partner communities rendering that portion of this discussion rather a moot point. Going forward, I think we've got an opportunity also, Mr. Chair, to examine a number of other things. And I understand that we're going to be getting a report back on water and sewer from a consultant. And I think that's something that this committee should undertake once that gets underway. And the other thing is that I understand that we've got something in the way of a review that's being conducted now regarding planning application fees. But I think also this committee should be undertaking a review of building and planning fees. And perhaps, I don't know if we want to introduce that today or if that may be something we can come to the next time, Mr. Chair. I think maybe there's enough on our plates now with respect to the sports aspect of this to not be loading ourselves up with too much work for the balance of this year. And once we conclude our business regarding sports, we can then look at these other aspects, which we all definitely want to get going on as well. So I guess we'll proceed without amendment to get this information, and then people in the community shouldn't be getting all excited about 1 or 2 tier rates for sports because going forward, this will be some time in coming. And if we can conclude a decent arrangement with partner communities, we may realize that we don't need to do that other portion of the work at all. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCreary. Any further discussion on the amendment or on the motion as amended? Seeing none, I'll call a question on that. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Oh, next is notice of motion, of which there are none. And third, could I get a mover for adjournment? Moved by Councillor Wall, seconded by Councillor Vanderstel. Anyone objecting? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, staff.
Have a great day.
Good job, Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Great job, Councillor Sless.
Have a good one.